November 2nd, 1987, Clarksville, Tennessee. A mid-autumn evening, chill in the air, the neighborhood quiet but for rustling leaves. 17-year-old Catherine Ann Mattingly locks her front door and steps outside. Not to walk the dog, not to chat with friends, just to get some air. Maybe to clear her head after a long day at school. But when she looks back, the porch is empty. There are no footprints, no car lights, no one called her name. She has vanished. Into the dark. Into a mystery that would stretch 17 years and beyond, before Catherine would find her way home. Clarksville is a modest community, a place where neighbors wave, where windows glow with life in early evening. But the next morning, Catherine is missing. Teens search the streets, teachers call the school, mothers whisper, fearing the worst. Police arrive. They search her room, nothing disturbed. They canvass the area. No signs. Some say she simply walked away. Others whisper darker theories. Time passes. 90 days. 365 days. Years, the case goes cold. Official efforts slow. Flyers fade in dusty cabinets. Memories dim. But Catherine does not exist by name in legal limbo. Her disappearance remains unresolved. Her family pleads. Neighbors wonder. Cold case detectives glance at her file every now and then. She walked into the void, one asked. But did someone notice she left? Then in 2004, a quiet spark. A volunteer uploads Catherine's long-ago flyer to the DOE network, a database dedicated to missing and unidentified persons. Maybe someone, somewhere scrolls by. Maybe someone remembers. There are hundreds of similar cases on the site, hundreds of faces. But one stands out to a visitor, a person with half a memory. She knew that face. She recognized herself, and she decides to call. So part 1 ends here, but the story only deepens. We'll explore her life during those 17 missing years, the reasons she vanished, how she discovered the online file, and why Catherine Ann Mattingly chose the moment she did to come home. The world had written her off, a runaway, a lost cause, a forgotten name filed between thousands of others. But Catherine Ann Mattingly wasn't dead. She was alive, and for 17 years, she had been hiding in plain sight. She had a new name, a new birthday, a fabricated past crafted carefully, delicately, like a survival manual, disguised as a memory. Her reasons? Not everyone runs because they want to disappear. Some run because no one ever noticed they were fading in the first place. Catherine didn't vanish into some stranger's car. She didn't end up in chains. She left, by choice, but not by freedom. Her story those missing years isn't what you expect. No hostage taker, no dark basement, no kidnappers. Her captor was silence. Her cage was disconnection. Her decision was born from pain. At 17, Catherine lived in a house full of rules, but very little love. She was quiet, withdrawn, not rebellious, but not hurt either. She fought invisible battles inside her head, the kind adults didn't see and friends mistook for mood swings. Mental health wasn't something people talked about in the 1980s, especially not in small-town Tennessee. Depression, anxiety, dissociation, words without meaning to her teachers. Taboo at the dinner table, shame in church pews. One night, something broke. No final straw, no shouting match, just a quiet unraveling, like the sound of a shoelace finally snapping after too many tight knots. She packed a backpack, one pair of jeans, one photo, $32, and a bus pass. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She didn't know herself. The next morning, Catherine was no longer in Clarksville. She took a Greyhound south, then west, changing names at each stop, sleeping in shelters, eating diner scraps, disappearing into the fabric of America. I wanted to be invisible, she would later say, not because I hated my life, but because I didn't believe it was mine to begin with. She drifted through cities, Memphis, Little Rock, Amarillo, At 20, she found a town with no questions. She took a job waitressing at a roadside diner. She introduced herself as Kelly, a name picked off a billboard. A few customers flirted. One offered her a place to stay, a tiny apartment, one mattress, a roommate who never asked questions. People don't dig deep when they don't expect you to stay, Catherine said. And for a while, she didn't. She moved every 18 months. She'd learned not to leave footprints. But then, something changed. At 25, Catherine became a mother. The child's father wasn't in the picture. There was no dramatic breakup, just a moment, a realization that she could no longer be invisible. Not entirely, because now someone depended on her, a tiny face that looked up at her and called her mama. I had to make a life, she said, for her, for me, for both of us. She got a license under her new name, a job at a bookstore. She enrolled in night classes, worked 2 jobs when rent was late, became a ghost with goals. But even ghosts have echoes, and hers caught up to her in the strangest way. One night in 2004, after putting her daughter to bed, Catherine was browsing online. She'd been reading about unsolved mysteries, stories she oddly found comfort in. Maybe I was looking for myself, she once admitted, or maybe I was testing if I'd been forgotten. She clicked a link, the Doe Network, Missing and Unidentified Persons Database. It was morbid curiosity, until it wasn't, because as she scrolled, she stopped, froze. There it was, her picture, age progressed, name listed Catherine Ann Mattingly, disappeared 1987, age 17, missing for 17. Her hand shook, her breath caught, her past just blinked back at her. Most people never get to read their own obituary. Most people never see their childhood face posted under missing for the entire world to search. But Catherine did. And in that moment, she wasn't just a woman with a daughter, she was a missing girl staring at the life she walked away from. For nearly 2 decades, her identity had been a carefully folded secret, tucked behind new names, tucked behind fake birthdays, tucked behind survival. Now, it was staring at her in digital ink. Name, Catherine Ann Mattingly, disappeared, November 2nd, 1987, Clarksville, Tennessee. Circumstances, last seen, leaving her home, never returned. She scrolled, saw the contact info for a volunteer investigator. She hovered over the email. It took me 3 nights to write the message, she said. And another 4 to send it. What do you even say? Hi, I'm the missing girl. Sorry I disappeared, but I'm alive and okay now. No message could do it justice, but she wrote anyway. The email was simple, 1 sentence, no flourish. I think I might be the girl listed on your site, Catherine Mattingly. Then she clicked send, closed her laptop, and waited. 2 days later, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a Tennessee area code. Her hands went cold. She let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, she picked up. On the other end was a man named Detective Brian Keller, retired, but still volunteering with missing persons databases. Ma'am, are you saying you're Catherine Ann Mattingly? Yes. And you disappeared in 1987? Yes. Can you prove that? Silence. She didn't have a birth certificate, didn't have her old school records, didn't remember every detail. But then she said something that made the detective pause. There's a scar on my hip. I got it from a metal chair when I was 7. My mom used to tell me not to fidget. The scar's still there. She described her childhood house, a neighbor's dog's name, the street she lived on, what song her mom used to play in the car. Each detail matched. The detective called the Mattingly family. He didn't say much, just that someone had come forward. Her mother Elaine dropped the phone. Her brother Michael didn't believe it. Her aunt began to cry. 17 years of silence had made them skeptical. They'd held vigils, lit candles, buried an empty casket, tried to let her go, but never really had. DNA was the next step. The detective coordinated a private test through the Doe Network. Andrea, now 34, mailed in a swab. 3 weeks later, the results arrived. 99.99998% biological match to Elaine Mattingly. The girl who walked away was no longer a ghost. She was a woman, a mother, a survivor, and finally, a daughter coming home. But the decision to reconnect wasn't easy. She had a child now, a daughter, who knew nothing of this. How do you explain to a 9-year-old, "I'm not who I told you I was"? How do you look into your child's eyes and say, "Mama used to be someone else, and she ran away"? So Catherine told the truth, not all at once, not perfectly, but gently. And when she finished, her daughter hugged her and said, "It's okay, I like our life." The reunion was set for mid-autumn, October, exactly 17 years since she vanished. She boarded a flight to Nashville, and a car picked her up. She rode in silence, watching the Tennessee landscape pass by, trees the color of rust and fire, each mile a memory she hadn't touched in nearly 2 decades. Then, she arrived, at the Mattingly house. Still the same porch, still the same driveway, still the same door. Her mother opened it, and they just stood there. 17 years, no contact, no closure, just a flood of emotion, and a silence that carried every word they couldn't say. Then her mother stepped forward, and wrapped her arms around her daughter like she would never let go again. Coming home sounds like a happy ending, but for Catherine Ann Mattingly, it was anything but simple. Because the girl her family had lost in 1987 wasn't the same woman who stood in their doorway in 2004. 17 years is a lifetime. Memories fade. Rooms change. People change. Her mother had aged. Her brother had become a man. New neighbors lived on the block. Old photos still hung on the wall, but now they looked like museum pieces. Time capsules of a version of her life that had frozen in place the moment she walked away. "I didn't know how to step back into a family that had mourned me," she said. "I was their tragedy, but I wasn't gone. I'd just rewritten myself." The house smelled the same, that mix of wood polish and lavender her mom always loved. Her old bedroom was a guest room now, her trophies gone, her posters removed. All traces of her life, carefully packed away, years ago, too painful to see, too sacred to toss. The reunion was warm, but it was also strange. They wanted the girl they lost, Catherine said, but I had become a woman they didn't know. She told them everything, not just where she'd been but why. The mental exhaustion, the emotional abuse, the feeling of drowning in silence in a house full of people. "I didn't run because I hated you," she told her mom. "I ran because I didn't know how to exist." Her mother sobbed, and for the first time, apologized. But apologies don't rewrite history. Catherine couldn't just slip back into her old skin. She had a life elsewhere, a daughter in another state, friends who knew her only by her assumed name. And now, the world wanted a piece of her story. The media got wind of it. An adult woman finds herself online, on a missing persons database, and comes forward. It was national news. Reporters knocked on her mother's door. Her name trended on forums. Strangers commented about how selfish she'd been. Others called her brave. Some accused her of faking the whole thing. "It felt like I was disappearing again," Catherine said. Only this time, in public. She declined interviews. She kept her daughter out of the spotlight. She issued one statement through the Doe network. "I was never taken. I left. But I am not proud of it. I am simply grateful to be found." Over the next year, Catherine made slow steps toward healing. She visited her mother once a month, talked to her brother again, even started therapy, something she'd never had the chance to try before. "I had to meet myself again," she said. "Not the version who ran, not the one they remembered, but the woman I had actually become." She legally changed her name back to Catherine Ann Mattingly, but she kept her daughter's surname private. Some things were hers to protect. The reunion wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, fights over the past, grief that resurfaced when least expected, but there was also laughter, and healing, and meals shared at the table where she once sat as a teenager with 1,000 silent fears. 17 years had passed, but now there was time again to rebuild, to forgive, to remember. 17 years ago, Catherine Mattingly vanished without a trace. She walked out her front door and disappeared into the pages of a cold case file. But what no one understood at the time is that Catherine didn't just go missing. She was searching, not for safety, not for freedom, not for revenge. She was searching for herself. When she returned, she didn't expect applause. She didn't want headlines or hashtags. She didn't see herself as brave. "I felt like I owed the world an apology," she once said. But the truth is, I just needed to exist without being invisible. And that's exactly what she began to do. Catherine went back to school. She enrolled in an adult education program and earned her degree in social work, not because it was easy, not because it made sense, but because she knew there were girls like her out there right now, the ones nobody asked about, the ones who go silent at dinner, the ones who never run away but wish they could. She became a caseworker at a nonprofit for at-risk youth, not as a survivor, but as a guide. She never told the girls her full story, not at first. But when they opened up about wanting to disappear, she'd listen, and she'd say, "I know what it feels like to leave without saying goodbye. I also know what it feels like to finally come home." In 2010, Catherine stood on stage at a missing persons advocacy event and shared her full journey publicly for the first time. The crowd was silent. Some wept, others held their breath. "You don't have to be taken to be lost," she said, "and you don't have to be gone to need to be found." Her story helped spark changes in how runaway cases were handled, especially for teens with signs of emotional trauma. She consulted with DOE Network volunteers, helped craft outreach programs, and quietly, without fanfare, reconnected with other families of long-missing persons. "I can't give them back their loved ones," she said, "but I can show them that sometimes the story isn't over yet." Catherine's daughter, now a young woman, would later say, "My mom taught me that truth is the scariest and most beautiful thing you can ever give someone." And as for Catherine's own mother, they grew close again, closer than they had ever been before. There were still gaps, wounds too deep to fully explain. But there was love, and forgiveness, and the knowledge that in the end, she came back. Catherine never went viral. Her name isn't printed in textbooks. There are no documentaries made about her on Netflix. But her story lives. In the children she advocates for. In the letters she writes to grieving families. In the quiet moments where she looks in the mirror and sees not just a survivor, but a woman reborn. "I was missing for 17 years," she once said. "But the real miracle isn't that I was found. It's that I finally saw myself." If Catherine's journey spoke to you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even cry, don't let it end here. Like this video to support untold stories that matter. Share it, you might help another family still searching for answers. Subscribe for more real-life stories of disappearance, survival, and return. Because behind every cold case is a human being trying to be seen.